Get out. 2 words, hard and final, echoing across polished marble floors and reverberating off glass walls. Scott Bennett's voice didn't just carry authority, it carried intent, the kind that was meant to wound and leave a scar, the kind that wasn't a mistake, wasn't a slip, but policy said out loud with no care for who heard or how deep it cut. That's how the morning began at Orion Industries, a company priding itself on progress and innovation, with a scene ripped straight from a playbook as old as the building's bones. Scott stood near the center of the expansive lobby, posture rigid, arms crossed over his pressed white shirt. His tie was the color of power, deep blue, almost black, and his jaw was clenched, as if daring anyone to question his word. To his right, Amanda Riley, the company's chief operating officer, watched with an expression that hovered somewhere between approval and unease. She was there for support, or maybe as a witness, but she didn't speak. At the edge of the front desk, Lauren Bennett, Scott's assistant, her last name a coincidence that sometimes made new hires flinch, clutched her notepad with white knuckles. Her eyes darted from Scott to the woman in front of him, as if measuring the temperature of the room, calculating the fallout before it hit. And in the center of it all stood Denise Harris. She wore Orion's uniform, dark blue, creased from a day of work, the logo patch faded from too many cycles through the industrial washer. Her shoes were practical, not pretty, and her hair was tucked beneath a cheap navy cap. She looked down at her cleaning cart, then up at Scott, her face unreadable, a mask perfected over a lifetime of being measured and found wanting. "Did you hear me?" Scott repeated louder, his voice bouncing off the lobby's high ceiling. "You're done. Grab your things and leave. This is my building and I won't have you in it another minute." A wave of silence washed through the lobby. Staff paused mid-stride, guests halted at the entrance, and even the ever-busy security team seemed to freeze. Brett Morgan, the head of security, hovered by the front doors, a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt, his eyes fixed on Denise. He was waiting for a sign from Scott, an order to step in and do what needed doing. Denise didn't flinch. She didn't plead or explain. She just stood a little taller, rolling her shoulders back, her voice low and even as she spoke. "What's this about, Mr. Bennett?" Scott's nostrils flared, as if the question itself was an insult. "Don't play dumb. We have standards here. I heard you were wandering the executive floor last night out of bounds for cleaning staff. You know the rules. I won't have people who can't follow protocol, not in my company." A ripple of whispers circled the lobby. Some were curious, others nervous. A few, those who'd worked alongside Denise for years, muttered in disbelief. Amanda cleared her throat. "Scott, maybe we can—" Scott cut her off with a glare. "No, this isn't up for discussion." He turned back to Denise. "Pack up. Security will escort you out." Yolanda Reed, supervisor of the cleaning crew, stepped forward, her voice tight with emotion. "Sir, there's been a mistake. Denise was scheduled to clean Conference Suite C last night. It's on the roster. I put it there myself." Scott's jaw tightened. "That's not the point. It's about trust and following directions. If you can't do either, you're out." Brett edged closer, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He was used to trouble, but not like this. Denise met his gaze, unafraid. "I'll leave," Denise said, her tone calm. "No need to put hands on me." Brett nodded, looking relieved. But as Denise turned to gather her things, Olivia Harris, a young marketing associate unrelated to Denise but with a sense of justice sharper than her job title suggested, pulled out her phone. She hit record, her hands shaking. "Someone needs to see this," she whispered to a nearby colleague. "This isn't right." The cleaning staff watched, torn between anger and fear. Some clutched their carts, others clung to each other. Darnell Freeman, one of the maintenance crew, muttered under his breath, "I can't believe this is happening." Jamari Evans, the night shift IT tech, stood behind a pillar, already texting. The message was short. It started. Denise pushed her cart slowly toward the exit. Each wheel squeaked in protest, as if the building itself understood the injustice. She paused at the glass doors, looked back over the sea of faces, some sympathetic, others indifferent, a few triumphant. Scott stood tall, convinced he'd asserted control. Amanda's lips were pressed thin. Lauren blinked rapidly, and Brett just watched, jaw clenched. "Remember this," Denise said softly, her eyes sweeping the lobby. "Remember how it felt to watch." She stepped out into the morning, the doors closing behind her with a hiss. Inside, the spell broke. Conversations restarted, too loud, too quick, desperate to erase what had just happened. Scott turned to Amanda. "Make sure her access is revoked. I want her out of the system before noon." Amanda nodded, jotting notes. "And the others?" He waved a dismissive hand. "Just her for now, but keep an eye on the rest." Yolanda lingered by the doors, eyes wet, voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't over." Brett heard her and said nothing. The moment Denise's feet hit the pavement outside, she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She'd known this day was coming, could feel it in the way Scott looked at her, the way Amanda avoided her gaze, the way Lauren's apologies had grown more clipped with each new policy change. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number from memory. Terrence Harris answered on the first ring. "Mom?" "It happened," Denise said, her voice steady. He was silent for a beat, then asked, "You okay?" "I'm fine," she replied. "It's time." Terrence's tone shifted, professional now, clipped and precise. "I'll start the process. Kayla's on standby." Denise nodded, though he couldn't see her. "I'll be there in an hour." She hung up, took one last look at the building, and started walking. Her steps were slow but certain, a woman who had nowhere to be but everywhere to go. Inside Orion, the news traveled faster than email. By the time Denise reached her car, the incident was the only topic of conversation. In the staff lounge, Yolanda comforted a young cleaner in tears. "She'll be all right," Yolanda said, more to herself than anyone else. "If you know Denise, you know she's never out of moves." Jamari's phone buzzed. "It's done," he texted. Denise replied, "Yes, begin phase 2. He grinned, slipping away to his office. Across town, Kayla Simmons pored over spreadsheets and shareholder reports, double-checking every figure, every signature. The foundation was solid. Denise's work, years in the making, was about to pay off. In Scott Bennett's office, the mood was less assured. Amanda paced, glancing at her phone every few seconds. "You think this will blow over?" she asked. Scott scoffed. "It always does. She was a janitor. No one will care tomorrow." Lauren looked up from her desk, lips pressed tight. "Social media already cares. Olivia's video is everywhere." Scott rolled his eyes. "Let PR handle it. We don't negotiate with noise." Amanda hesitated. "You sure? It feels different this time." Scott glared. "Trust me, I've done this before." But deep down, a flicker of doubt began to smolder. Across the city, Denise sat in a quiet cafe, her coffee untouched. Terrence joined her, suit immaculate, every movement calculated. "You ready?" he asked. Denise nodded. "Ready as I'll ever be." He opened his laptop, logging into the secure portal. "You have controlling interest. The trust is airtight. No one can outvote you." Kayla arrived minutes later, breathless from the rush, but smiling. "Everything's lined up. The board can't ignore you." Denise took a deep breath. "Then let's begin." Terrence drafted the notice, invoking Denise's right as majority shareholder to call an emergency board meeting. Kayla sent a message to Rachel Morris, head of PR. "Prepare for major announcement." Jamari, still in his office, finalized backups of every employee record, every internal memo, and every email that mentioned Denise's name. He was ready. Back at Orion, tension crackled in every hallway. Employees huddled in corners, eyes wide, voices low. "I heard she's suing." "No, I heard she owns half the company." Can you imagine? Scott would lose it. In the break room, Yolanda read the news on her phone. Orion CEO fires janitor in lobby, video goes viral. The comments poured in. "This is why companies need oversight. She deserves better. I hope she sues." Yolanda smiled, hope blooming in her chest. Scott convened his inner circle in the top-floor conference room. Amanda, Lauren, Brett, and Jason Whitaker. Jason was new to the executive team, smart and observant, but careful not to rock the boat. "We need to control the narrative," Scott declared. Amanda, reach out to our contacts at the local paper. Lauren, draft a statement, nothing specific, just company policy. Lauren scribbled furiously. Jason cleared his throat. What if the story doesn't die? What if she fights back? Scott bristled. Then we fight harder. Amanda shifted in her seat. You saw her face, Scott. She wasn't afraid. He shrugged. They never are, until they realize how the world works. Meanwhile, Denise and her team worked late into the night. The cafe emptied around them, but they didn't notice. Terrence coordinated with legal. Kayla handled finances. Jamari sent encrypted updates. We'll call the meeting for tomorrow morning, Terrence said. Give them just enough time to panic, not enough to prepare. Denise nodded, her mind already racing through every possible scenario. What do I say when they ask why? Terrence smiled. You tell them the truth. You were fired for being visible. Now you're visible in the way that matters. Kayla squeezed Denise's hand. You built this. Don't let them take it away. Denise smiled, small and fierce. Not a chance. Back at Orion, Brett made his final rounds, checking doors and windows, logging off his computer. He paused outside Scott's office, listening to the muffled voices inside. Think she's bluffing? Lauren asked. Scott's reply was a snarl. She's a janitor. What can she do? Brett shook his head, moving on. He'd seen enough over the years to know that sometimes the people you ignore are the ones you should fear the most. Dawn crept across the city, painting Orion's glass towers in gold. Denise stood outside the front doors, dressed not in her uniform but in a sharp black blazer and pressed slacks. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes steady. She paused, breathing in the morning air. Yolanda met her at the entrance. You ready? Denise nodded. Let's go. They walked inside together, every eye turning as they crossed the lobby. Brett blinked, unsure if he should intervene, but something in Denise's posture made him step aside. Lauren gasped, nearly spilling her coffee. Amanda froze mid-stride. Jason watched, eyebrows raised in surprise. Denise took the elevator to the executive floor, Yolanda at her side. The doors slid open, and the boardroom loomed ahead. Terrence and Kayla waited inside, files spread out, calm and prepared. Scott sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his loyalists. He looked up, eyes narrowing. You have some nerve coming here, he spat. Denise set her folder on the table, voice calm and strong. I have every right. As majority shareholder, I'm calling an emergency board meeting, effective immediately. Amanda's jaw dropped. Lauren paled. Jason stared in disbelief. Scott laughed, bitter and sharp. This is a joke. Terrence slid the paperwork across the table. No joke. The trust, the shares, the votes, they're all hers. Rachel Morris, summoned for PR support, skimmed the documents, her hands trembling. It's all here, Scott. She owns controlling interest. The room fell silent. Denise looked at Scott, her voice steady. You fired me yesterday. Today I decide who stays. A hush settled like fog, thicker than before. Jason shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands trembling just slightly as he realized this was no boardroom power play. It was something deeper, older. The entire hierarchy had tilted in a way he'd never seen. Scott forced a laugh, but it didn't land. Let's not get dramatic. I run this company. I built this company. You're here because I allowed it. Denise didn't blink. You didn't build anything, Scott. You inherited a culture and called it vision. You kept people like me invisible and called it progress. He tried to wave her off. Whatever this is, it's not going to work. The board won't stand for it. But Amanda, eyes locked on the trust paperwork, wasn't so sure. She holds the votes, Scott. It's over. For the first time, fear flickered across Scott's face. You think you can just walk in and take what's mine? Terrence looked him straight in the eye. You took what was hers for 15 years. Credit, respect, belonging. Today you answer for it. Kayla began reading the bylaws aloud. Per Section 7, Article 12, the controlling shareholder may call for an immediate vote of confidence in the CEO and executive staff. A heavy pause. Lauren, voice almost lost, asked, You planned this? Denise's eyes met hers, soft but unyielding. I survived this. There's a difference. Jason glanced at Amanda, then at Rachel, who was furiously typing notes for a potential press release. He whispered, We're all on camera now. And they were. News had already broken out. Olivia's video was now on 3 local channels. More phones appeared, held by lower-level staff and even a few executives, capturing every syllable, every bead of sweat on Scott's forehead. Yolanda stood behind Denise, arms folded, radiating quiet pride. She nodded at Jamari, who had slipped in unnoticed and started a live internal broadcast of the meeting, Orion's first, and probably its most watched. Denise took a seat at the table's end, but her presence filled the room. You have a choice. You can do this the easy way or the honest way, but you're going to do it. Scott's fingers drummed the polished table. This is mutiny. Kayla didn't flinch. This is the rule of law. This is transparency. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Amanda straightened her jacket. Let's vote. Lauren scribbled a note and passed it to Jason. What if she's right? Jason scribbled back, she is right. Brett, who had wandered in with the security team, stood at the door, arms crossed. If the board says so, it stands. Rachel looked up from her phone. The press wants a statement. What should I say? Scott stared her down. Say nothing, this isn't over. But Rachel had already made up her mind. She turned her phone to silent, slid it into her bag, and looked to Denise. If you want my help, you have it. Denise nodded. You can start by letting everyone know the meeting is being streamed. No more secrets. If you're proud of your work, let the world see it. Lauren's hands shook as she tapped out a message on the company intranet. The notification pinged on every screen in the building. Emergency all hands broadcast. Tune in now. Downstairs, employees dropped what they were doing. Yolanda's cleaning crew huddled around an old desktop. Darnell wheeled his mop bucket close, eyes fixed on the screen. In IT, Jamari's stream flashed green, 10,000-plus viewers. Denise addressed the camera with the same calm she'd shown in the lobby. Yesterday, I was fired in front of all of you. Today, I'm asking for your trust, not as your boss, but as someone who's walked every hallway you have, done every job you've done. I built my stake in this company $1 at a time while most people tried not to see me at all. But I saw you. I still do. A few staffers wiped away tears. She continued, if you have ever felt small, if you have ever been told your voice didn't matter, this is your company too. And from this day forward, we decide together what kind of place it will be. The vote began, ballots passed by hand, old school. Each member wrote their decision and dropped it in the box. Kayla counted, her fingers steady. Denise watched Scott as he folded his ballot, refusing to meet her eyes. Amanda's hand shook. Lauren scribbled, paused, scribbled again, finally sealing her vote with a sigh. The box came around to Denise last. She stared at her blank slip, then wrote a single word, change. Kayla tallied the votes and read the results aloud. On the question of whether Scott Bennett shall remain as CEO, the votes are as follows, 8 no, 1 yes. The room fell still. Amanda cleared her throat. Effective immediately, Scott Bennett is relieved of all duties at Orion Industries. Scott stood, color draining from his face. You'll regret this, he snarled, but the threat felt hollow. Denise rose. You said I was done here. Now I'm saying the same to you. Security waited in the hall, not to escort Denise, but to walk Scott and Amanda out. Brett's voice was quiet but resolute. It's policy. As Scott walked the gauntlet of his own employees, the building felt different, like a storm had passed and left behind fresh air. He refused to meet anyone's gaze, muttering promises of lawsuits and revenge, but every step away was a victory not just for Denise, but for everyone who'd ever been silenced. As Scott and Amanda disappeared down the hallway, the boardroom remained frozen for a long heartbeat, the only sound the faint clicking of Rachel's keyboard as she fired off an internal memo. Effective immediately, interim leadership has been assumed by Denise Harris, majority shareholder. Lauren finally let out a breath she'd been holding since sunrise, eyes shining with a strange mix of relief and fear. She turned to Denise, voice trembling. What do we do now? Denise looked at the faces gathered around the table, some stunned, a few hopeful, most still processing the seismic shift. She saw not just executives, but people, each one with a story, each one suddenly aware that the future of the company was no longer dictated from above, but unfolding right here in real time. "We do what should have been done from the start," Denise replied. "We listen." She turned to the camera, still streaming to thousands of desktops and cell phones across the company's offices, warehouses, and even the homes of remote staff. "For those watching, this isn't just about me or Mr. Bennett. This is about all of us. I was fired for doing my job. Today, I promise no one will lose their job for telling the truth or asking for fairness. We're not going back." A ripple of applause began in the IT bullpen, traveled to the maintenance team in the basement, and grew louder as more employees joined in, clapping and even cheering as their faces appeared in split screens on the broadcast. For the first time in Orion's history, the applause wasn't forced, wasn't choreographed for a newsletter photo op. It was real. Jason Whitaker stepped forward. "How can we help?" Denise smiled, her calm resolve now blooming into something close to joy. "Start by bringing in every department head. We're not closing doors, we're opening them." Lauren relayed instructions. "All department heads to the executive conference room immediately." The message shot through every corner of the building. Yolanda and Jamari joined Denise at the table, followed by Kayla and Terrence, who set up laptops, rolling out spreadsheets and staff feedback forms. Denise addressed the gathering crowd in person and on screen. "We are launching a full review of every policy, every dismissal, every pay gap. Effective immediately, we're forming a workers' council. No decision will be made without hearing from the people it affects." The reactions ranged from disbelief to jubilation. In the back, Darnell Freeman punched the air, whispering, "Finally." Marketing and customer service staff swapped stunned looks. Security guards, used to following orders without context, began to hope their voices might count for more than just backup in a crisis. As the meeting filled, Lauren distributed surveys. "What would you change? What's one thing you wish leadership understood about your job?" Terrence announced. "All answers are anonymous. No one will be punished for honesty. This is a fresh start." Kayla, running the numbers, revealed shocking pay disparities and outlined plans for immediate raises for the lowest paid staff. "No one who keeps this company running should struggle to put food on the table." Jamari demoed a new feedback app, anonymized, encrypted, impossible for managers to trace. "If you see something wrong, say it. You'll be protected." Rachel drafted the press statement. Today, Orion Industries took the first step toward true equity in American business. We invite our clients, partners, and community to hold us accountable. Denise nodded, approving every word. Outside the glass walls, news crews gathered, drawn by the viral story of the janitor turned CEO. Inside, staff hugged each other, wiped tears from their eyes, and sent messages to friends and family. "You'll never believe what just happened at work." Lauren, still shaky, said to Denise, "I was afraid to speak up. I thought I'd lose everything, but you just did it." Denise squeezed her hand. "You have to do what's right, even when it scares you, especially then." The first day was chaos, meetings running into the night, old managers quietly packing their offices, security swapping protocols, maintenance unlocking doors that had always been off-limits. But everywhere Denise walked, people stopped her, shook her hand, thanked her. Yolanda, exhausted but glowing, hugged Denise in the staff lounge. "You did it. You really did." Denise hugged her back, fighting tears of relief. "We did. All of us." By midnight, as the last lights flickered off and the building finally slept, Denise sat alone in the lobby, feet sore, heart pounding with adrenaline and pride. She remembered the humiliation of that morning, Scott's voice, the weight of watching eyes, the sting of being told she didn't belong. But now, in the quiet, she understood what her parents always told her. Dignity isn't given, it's claimed. She picked up her phone and texted Terrence and Kayla. "Thank you for believing. Let's get ready for tomorrow. There's work to do." Outside, the city skyline glowed, indifferent and eternal. But inside Orion, for the first time, the future was being rewritten. The world doesn't stop for even the loudest revolutions, but inside Orion Industries, everything felt different. Overnight, the video of Denise's firing and the subsequent boardroom shakeup exploded, shared by news outlets, reposted by activists, dissected on forums by strangers who knew nothing of janitorial schedules or boardroom rules, but recognized a seismic shift when they saw one. The building's glass facade glittered in the morning sun, masking a new kind of energy inside. Nervous, hopeful, uncertain, and, above all, curious. Denise Harris sat at the CEO's desk, a seat that had never been intended for her, not by Scott Bennett, not by Amanda Riley, not by anyone except perhaps Denise herself. She had slept little, too many details spinning in her mind. Personnel files, maintenance budgets, emails flagged urgent. Her phone buzzed nonstop, congratulations, demands, invitations to speak on talk shows, offers for book deals, and of course a torrent of press requests. But none of that mattered, not yet. Denise understood what most leaders never did, that real change didn't happen in public. It happened in the quiet, when you listened to people who were used to being ignored. Her first act that morning wasn't a headline-grabbing memo or a flashy speech. Instead, she asked Yolanda and Jamari to bring in every overnight staff member, from maintenance to security to the janitorial crew, for a closed-door meeting in the same conference room where she'd been voted into power just hours before. Yolanda arrived first, shoulders square but eyes tired. "I've got the crew outside," she said. "Some are scared, some are just confused." Denise nodded. "Let's start simple." She stood, smoothed her blazer, and opened the doors. A small group filtered in. Darnell, nervous as always. Olivia Harris, still clutching her phone, wide-eyed. A handful of night shift cleaners, and 2 security guards who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Denise motioned for everyone to take a seat. The staff sat gingerly, exchanging glances, no one quite sure what was expected. Denise began. "I know yesterday was a shock. For some of you, it felt like a victory. For others, maybe not. What matters now is what comes next. You deserve to be heard, not just today, but every day." Yolanda added, "If you have questions, now's the time." A silence stretched, long and taut. Then Darnell cleared his throat. "Are we safe? I mean, do we still have jobs?" Denise answered without hesitation. "You do. No one is losing their job because they spoke up, because they told the truth, or because they did their work with dignity. That ends now." A ripple of relief moved through the group. Olivia raised her hand, almost embarrassed. "What about the people who supported Scott? Are they gone?" Denise shook her head. "We're not punishing anyone for being scared or for following orders. We're starting over. If people want to do the work, they're welcome. If not, they'll have to find somewhere else to be." A janitor named Martha, older than most, her face creased by years of night shifts, spoke quietly. "I never thought I'd see someone like me at that table. I just want to do my job and go home with my head high. That's all." Denise smiled softly. "That's more than enough." After the meeting, Denise walked the building floor by floor, shaking hands, introducing herself, not as the new CEO, but as Denise. People were hesitant at first, unsure if this was a show or something real. But as the hours passed, as Denise listened more than she spoke, as she asked questions about broken air conditioners, outdated payroll systems, and forgotten safety complaints, staff began to trust. In the cafeteria, she sat beside marketing staff and customer service reps, joining in for coffee, refusing special treatment. She asked Lauren to send her all unresolved complaints from the last 2 years, nothing filtered, nothing redacted. Kayla and Terrence set up temporary offices on either side of Denise's, handling the onslaught of media attention. They fielded requests from the board, old clients, and, more urgently, nervous investors who had never heard Denise's name but knew the bottom line was suddenly at risk. Kayla worked through the night, poring over Orion's finances, tracing every misallocated dollar, every hidden bonus, every vendor contract that seemed to benefit executives more than employees. "This place bleeds money," she told Denise. but only for the few at the top. Terrence met with legal, quietly reviewing contracts, severance agreements, and, most importantly, the trust. They'll challenge you, he warned. Scott's lawyers are already sniffing around. They'll look for any way to claw back power. Denise was ready. Let them. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to rebuild. By mid-morning, Rachel Morris called an emergency PR huddle. The press was camped outside. Emails flooded in from clients, some worried, some threatening to pull accounts, others applauding the shakeup and asking for meetings with Denise. "We need a message," Rachel said. "A real one, not corporate boilerplate." Denise joined the call, speaking from her cell as she walked the building. "Say this. We're committed to fairness, honesty, and listening to our people. We're not perfect, but we're trying. Invite anyone with questions to meet with me one-on-one." Rachel was silent for a beat, then nodded. That's the first honest thing anyone said to the press in years. Meanwhile, Jamari and his team set up a digital suggestion box, anonymous, encrypted, accessible from any company device. In the first hour, 400 suggestions poured in. Some were complaints about pay and benefits. Others told stories of discrimination, of managers who stole credit, of years spent fearing the next round of layoffs. But many messages were hopeful, even grateful. "Thank you for seeing us. Don't let them change you. If you ever need help, I'm here." Denise read every message. As the news cycle thundered on, so did the backlash. On a popular business blog, an anonymous insider posted a screed. "This is what happens when DEI goes too far. Expect to see Orion crash and burn." In private WhatsApp groups, Scott's supporters plotted comebacks, whispering rumors of hostile takeovers and shadowy board maneuvers. At home, Denise's phone buzzed with threats, voicemails from blocked numbers, emails laced with coded warnings. "You're not CEO material. We'll see you out before the quarter ends. You don't belong." Terrence listened to every message, logging details for the police. "Let them talk," he told his mother. "They're scared." Denise nodded, feeling the old ache of being unwelcome. But she was not afraid. She was tired, bone-tired. But for the first time, she wasn't alone. Kayla drafted a memo to all employees. "If you feel unsafe, report it. If you need support, we'll provide it. If you face retaliation, we'll handle it. No exceptions." In the weeks that followed, Denise's approach was relentless. She met with every department head, challenging them to defend old policies, explain pay gaps, and, most importantly, listen. She reinstated several employees fired for insubordination, a word that now meant honest disagreement. She held open forums where anyone could speak. No cameras, no hierarchy. It was not easy. Not everyone wanted change. Some managers quit on the spot, unable to accept a world where their word was not law. Others tried to undermine Denise, spreading lies, working quietly to sabotage her reforms. But for every setback, Denise found an ally, an HR clerk who produced a lost file, a veteran maintenance worker who showed her hidden flaws in the building's infrastructure, a junior analyst who volunteered to redesign performance reviews for fairness. The first Friday of Denise's tenure, the Workers' Council met for the first time. Yolanda chaired the meeting, a role she'd never imagined but stepped into with pride. Jamari brought data, Kayla moderated the agenda, and Terrence kept the minutes. They began by listing every issue raised in the suggestion box, big and small. Then they prioritized pay equity, health and safety, promotion transparency, grievance redressal, the diversity in hiring. Denise didn't just listen, she acted. Raises were approved for all entry-level staff. Outdated safety equipment was replaced. A new mentorship program paired interns with executives, not for appearances, but for real training. Not everyone welcomed the changes with open arms. In the privacy of closed-door meetings and off-the-record chats, a core of old-guard managers stewed. Brian Walsh, who had managed finance under Scott, muttered to a friend, "She doesn't understand what it takes to keep this place profitable. Raises in new gear? Where's the money coming from?" Others grumbled that Denise was turning the place into a charity and rewarding complainers. But among the rank and file, trust began to blossom. Word traveled fast. The overnight cleaning crew learned they could finally refuse unsafe overtime without risking their jobs. Security guards found new protocols emphasizing de-escalation and communication instead of intimidation. Entry-level tech support workers discovered new pathways for advancement, with their names and efforts highlighted in staff bulletins. At lunch one afternoon, Denise sat with a rotating group from every department. One day it was Yolanda and the maintenance team, another it was a trio of IT interns, another the marketing leads. Her questions were simple, but always direct. What do you wish leadership understood? What's one thing you'd fix, if you could? The answers startled her with their candor. Half the elevators break every week. Managers ignore emails for days. We don't know who decides promotions. The old CEO's office had wine bottles in the cabinets. Guess who paid? Denise kept notes, but also names. The more she listened, the more she realized the real expertise at Orion wasn't in the C-suite. It was spread across every floor, every shift, every overlooked employee who'd been taught to stay silent. Meanwhile, Kayla and Terrence faced down the board's anxiety. Some directors, initially skeptical or even hostile, began to see results in staff retention and morale. Others were only appeased when Denise walked them through balance sheets herself, showing how waste and bloat had masked years of mismanagement. Still, a few waited for her to stumble, betting she'd fail, and they could return to business as usual. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low over the city skyline, Denise and Yolanda found themselves alone in a quiet corner of the building, sipping tea and reviewing yet another round of staff feedback. Yolanda laughed, shaking her head. You know, the rumor mill says you're about to install a nap room for janitors and start free yoga in the break room. Denise grinned. Maybe I will. Maybe everyone would be nicer if they had a nap. They both laughed, tension melting away, if only for a moment. Then Yolanda turned serious. You're doing something nobody thought possible. You made people believe this place could change. Denise's smile faded to something softer. Let's hope I can keep them believing. Outside the walls of Orion, the world kept watching. Journalists followed Denise's story, some with admiration, others with skepticism. She turned down most interviews, knowing how easily a soundbite could be twisted. But she accepted one invitation from a respected local radio host, wanting to reach working-class listeners who'd followed the story from the start. The host, an older black woman named Regina, asked the question on everyone's mind. How did you go from janitor to CEO? What gave you the courage to fight? Denise spoke plainly, her voice resonant with a lifetime's experience. I was raised by parents who never let me believe I was less than anyone. My mother worked 3 jobs. My father taught me to keep my dignity no matter what. I never planned on power, I just wanted respect. But when the world tells you that you're invisible, you learn to make your moves quietly until the time is right. Regina pressed, and what do you say to people who claim you're unqualified, that you don't belong? Denise didn't hesitate. I say I've done every job in this building. I know what it feels like to sweep floors and fix leaks. I know how to manage a budget with pennies. If that's not leadership, what is? The response was electric. Listeners called in, sharing their own stories of being overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated. A groundswell of public support grew. Workers from all industries, teachers, retail clerks, nurses, hotel staff, cheering Denise on as a symbol of hope. Back at Orion, Kayla watched the stream and wept quietly. You did it, Mom, she whispered. You really did it. But not everyone was happy. Outside the spotlight, Scott Bennett licked his wounds, working the phones and emailing old allies. He made veiled threats, lawsuits, hostile press, even a call to a rival investment firm. Amanda Riley, less brazen but equally bitter, gathered a handful of loyalists and floated the idea of a new startup, poaching key Orion clients and talent. Brett Morgan, disgraced, interviewed with competitors, vowing never to work for someone who couldn't cut it in the real world. Denise expected resistance, What she didn't expect was how quickly some employees, those long used to surviving the system, embraced the new order. Lauren Bennett, once Scott's nervous assistant, blossomed in her new role supporting Denise. She became a conduit for staff ideas, suggestions, even complaints, and learned to trust her own judgment for the first time. Jason Whitaker, always friendly but previously a bystander to injustice, volunteered to lead a new diversity and equity task force, opening up conversations he'd once avoided. "If I want things to be better for my kids," he told the group, "I can't pretend I don't see what's wrong." Denise met every new effort with gratitude, always sharing credit, always pushing her people to do more. "Change doesn't belong to one person," she reminded them at every meeting. "It belongs to all of us." The months that followed were both inspiring and grueling. Denise worked harder than she ever had in her life. She started each day with a walk through the building, stopping to chat with the cleaning crew, checking in with night shift security, nodding at the earliest arrivals in the finance department. Her presence was felt everywhere. At the coffee stations, the mailroom, even in the server room where she'd ask Jamari about cybersecurity and how to make the system safer for all employees. She made time for Yolanda every afternoon. They'd meet in the new facilities office, once a forgotten storage closet, now painted, lit, and humming with activity. It was there that Yolanda confided her biggest worry. "Sometimes I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like maybe someone will decide all this was a mistake and we'll go back to the way it was." Denise understood. She'd seen how easily hope could be snatched away, but she was determined to push forward. "Every time you feel that way, remind yourself, we're here because we fought for it. That's not something anyone can erase." At the next Workers' Council, Darnell, now bolder in his advocacy, spoke up. "We need better equipment and we need to hire more hands. We can't do the job right if we're always short-handed." Denise nodded. "We'll budget for it this quarter. And if anyone tries to block it, they answer to me." Martha, who'd been silent for weeks, shared a story about training a new temp who'd thanked her for making the place feel human. The council clapped. The meeting ran long, but no one minded. Outside, the backlash intensified. Anonymous flyers appeared on car windshields in the company parking lot. "Orion is failing. New management is weak." Social media bots flooded reviews with one-star ratings. Rumors spread that investors were fleeing, that layoffs were coming, that Denise would be gone before the year was out. Kayla tracked the rumors, documenting every lie, every attack. Terrence met with the board, pushing back against alarmists and reminding them of their legal obligations. Rachel, always ready, pushed positive stories about Orion's transformation to friendly reporters and clients. Through it all, Denise never raised her voice, never showed fear. Instead, she doubled down on transparency, releasing monthly reports to all staff, financials, complaints, successes, and failures, all laid bare. "Trust isn't given," she said in one meeting. "It's earned day after day in the open." Her approach resonated. Staff turnover dropped to the lowest level in a decade. Productivity rose, but more importantly, morale soared. People who had once dreaded coming to work now volunteered for extra shifts, asked for more responsibility, offered to mentor newcomers. For the first time, Orion's annual employee survey reflected real satisfaction, not just compliance. As autumn arrived, Denise hosted a town hall for the entire company. No scripts, no staged questions, just honest conversation. Employees asked hard questions. Some vented frustration at the slow pace of reform. Others shared how the new leadership had changed their lives. A young black woman from accounts payable stood up, voice trembling. "I used to think I'd never get promoted here. Now I know it's possible. Not because you said so, but because you showed it." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Denise lingered in the empty atrium. She looked up at the banners touting Orion's values, integrity, innovation, inclusion. For the first time, those words felt earned. Yolanda joined her, smiling. You made them see us. Denise shook her head. We made them see each other. That's what matters. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, sorting through the day's emails. Her inbox was full. Notes from grateful employees, a message from a former janitor now thriving in sales, a photo of the new maintenance crew celebrating a record safety streak. There were angry messages, too, and she read them all, reminders that the fight was far from over. Before bed, Denise wrote a memo to the entire company. It was short, direct, and true. We're just getting started. Change isn't a single moment, it's every moment. Thank you for fighting for it with me. She hit send, closed her laptop, and for the first time in weeks, allowed herself to hope, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been told they were only as good as the job someone else gave them. Orion Industries wasn't perfect, but under Denise Harris, it was finally becoming possible. Denise Harris had barely begun to understand the ripple she'd set in motion. On the morning after her first town hall, her phone started buzzing before sunrise. Voicemails from civil rights organizations, invitations to appear on national news, LinkedIn requests from strangers hoping to catch a bit of the magic that had sent shockwaves through her city. The world had noticed, but for Denise, the focus was still on Orion and the people who worked there. She wasn't interested in being a symbol. She wanted to be a solution. Even as reporters camped outside, Denise slipped into the building the same way she always had. Early, unnoticed, blending in. But now, as she passed through the security gates, people looked up. A new level of respect, and yes, a little awe followed her. She saw it in the way Darnell nodded from the maintenance desk, in the way marketing interns smiled at her in the elevator, and in the way a pair of janitors waved, proud to see one of their own not just survive, but lead. At her desk, Denise found a stack of interdepartmental mail, real paper, addressed to CEO Harris. Among the forms and budget requests was a letter from a retired janitor, handwritten in careful script. Dear Denise, I worked at Orion for 30 years. I never thought I'd see the day someone like us would sit in that chair. You did it for all of us. Thank you. By Clarence Lewis. She took a quiet moment to breathe, letting the words settle into her heart. Her first meeting was with Kayla, who was fighting off another wave of negative stories. The business blogs are running opinion pieces calling you a fluke, Kayla said, voice tense. Some investors are rattled. They want to know if you have a real 5-year plan. Denise nodded. Tell them I do, and if they don't trust it, they're free to invest elsewhere. I won't run this company scared. Kayla grinned, proud. That's my mom. As the morning unfolded, the new Orion revealed itself in small ways. The break room bulletin board, once cluttered with stale notices and warnings, now featured photos of staff with their families, recipes from the cafeteria cooks, a sign-up for the softball league Darnell had revived. Lauren, newly confident, started a question of the day board, posting everything from "What's your dream vacation?" to "What's one thing you'd change about your job?" Jamari led a workshop on digital privacy and cybersecurity, opening with a story about how the company had once blamed him for a server outage caused by outdated hardware. No more secrets, he promised. If you see something wrong, bring it to me. Yolanda instituted a rotating mentorship program for cleaning and facilities staff. Each week, a new crew member shadowed her as she handled supply orders, payroll, and vendor meetings. The first participant, a shy 20-year-old named Malik, ended his week asking about classes in business management. He's got potential, Yolanda told Denise. So do a lot of these folks. Denise replied, let's find them all. The changes didn't stop at the bottom. Department heads who once guarded information as power now found themselves answering questions they'd never faced. Jason Whitaker, tasked with leading the Diversity and Equity Task Force, started a company-wide book club reading The Warmth of Other Suns, followed by group discussions. It's not just about what happened here, he explained. It's about what's happening everywhere. The first discussion was tense, with some managers bristling at the idea of confronting uncomfortable history. But by the end of the hour, stories began to pour out of microaggressions, missed opportunities, overlooked talent. The group agreed to meet every month, and attendance only grew. Meanwhile, Rachel Morris, who had once dreaded facing reporters, found herself in demand for panels on ethical corporate communication. "I keep telling them," she joked to Denise, "that honesty is the only PR strategy worth having." The results were real. Staff engagement hit record highs. Clients noticed the change, too. Old accounts, once at risk of leaving, renewed with enthusiasm, citing Orion's new transparency and the improvements in service and response time. A major tech firm even offered to partner on a pilot project to bring more underrepresented talent into the industry. But the world outside was not always welcoming. The more Orion changed, the more some old guard business leaders sharpened their knives. Scott Bennett, still smarting from his public ouster, had become a fixture on talk radio and online forums, railing against wokeness and political correctness gone mad. He penned op-eds, hired lawyers, and started a lawsuit claiming Denise had used insider information and reverse discrimination to take control. Amanda Riley and Brett Morgan resurfaced in a rival consulting firm, cold-calling Orion's clients and peddling a story of chaos behind the scenes. "They'll fail," Amanda assured her new team. "Give it 6 months. That place can't run without us." Some former managers, angry at their loss of status, anonymously leaked stories to bloggers, old HR disputes, out-of-context quotes from Denise, even doctored images, hoping to poison public opinion. The pressure mounted, the legal bills stacked up. Anonymous threats, racist, misogynist, sometimes both, appeared in Denise's inbox, and at times she wondered if the cost of leadership was simply too high. She confided in Terrence one night over takeout. "It's hard to sleep," she admitted. "I keep thinking maybe I'm pushing too fast. Maybe I'm making it harder for everyone here." Terrence took her hand, his face gentle. "Mom, this was always going to be a fight. They want you to feel like you don't belong. But look around. Every day you stay, you prove them wrong." Denise nodded, the words settling in her chest like armor. Word of Orion's transformation began to spread beyond the city. Regional news crews visited, producing feel-good segments about the janitor who became CEO. National podcasts invited Denise to share her philosophy. She declined the biggest ones, wary of becoming a symbol rather than a leader, but she sent her staff to tell their stories. Yolanda appeared on a morning radio show speaking about dignity in work. Jamari gave a TED-style talk at a community college about building tech careers from the ground up, his slide deck opening with a selfie in his Orion work shirt. Denise encouraged it all. "Let people see what's possible," she told her team, "but don't ever let the story go to your head. We're just getting started." Inside Orion, the company's first true open-door policy began to bear fruit. Lauren, now trusted by Denise, ran weekly office hours where any employee could come talk about ideas, frustrations, or just ask for advice. Sometimes the sessions were jammed. Sometimes she spent the hour alone reading. But over time, trust grew, and Lauren found herself helping others in ways she'd never imagined, connecting a night janitor to the company's new education stipend, smoothing over tensions between teams, recommending overlooked staff for open positions. Jason Whitaker's equity task force grew bolder. They built a mentorship ladder, connecting line workers with managers for one-on-one guidance and feedback. Jason spent hours explaining his own missteps and listening to stories from those who'd never had a seat at the table before. "I didn't realize how many times I'd overlooked good people," he admitted at one meeting. "We can do better." Rachel's PR strategy focused on honesty, even when it stung. When a client complained that a beloved supervisor had been let go for violating the new fairness code, Rachel replied with empathy but stood firm. "We're committed to this path. If you don't believe in it, maybe we're not the right partner." The client paused, reconsidered, and eventually renewed their contract. Not all responses were positive. Scott's lawsuit became a cause célèbre for a small but loud group of pundits. They hosted online town halls demanding Denise's resignation, trotted out former staffers to make wild claims, and even attempted to picket Orion's headquarters. The city police, briefed by Terrence and Kayla, ensured everyone's safety. Through it all, Denise insisted on transparency. She held monthly town halls, answered every hard question, and published both successes and failures in staff-wide emails. "People know when you're spinning them," she said in one meeting. "Respect is telling the truth, even when it hurts." Despite the mounting pressure, Orion's internal culture began to change in ways even Denise hadn't expected. At the annual company picnic, attendance tripled. Instead of the old executives-only buffet, food trucks lined the parking lot, serving everything from tacos to vegan wraps. Denise worked the grills with Yolanda, laughing and flipping burgers for everyone, refusing to take a break until the last employee was fed. For the first time, people from every level of the company mingled without fear. Children played soccer in the lot. A maintenance tech, previously shy, wowed the crowd by singing "Ain't No Mountain High Enough" during karaoke hour, and the applause was genuine, thunderous. After the picnic, Denise was approached by an elderly man, Clarence Lewis, the retired janitor who'd written her that first congratulatory letter. He handed her a photo of himself in the Orion lobby from 30 years ago. "I came back to see if it was real," he said, voice trembling with pride. "I wanted to shake your hand, say thank you." Denise hugged him, tears in her eyes. "You're part of this, Clarence, all of this." But as Orion grew in confidence, so did its enemies. Scott Bennett's legal team, frustrated by delays, began a smear campaign, leaking old emails, questioning Denise's credentials, even hiring private investigators to dig into her past. One afternoon, Kayla discovered a reporter waiting outside her apartment, peppering her with invasive questions about her mother's finances and personal history. Denise's reaction was swift. She called an all-hands meeting, inviting every employee to hear her side, unfiltered. "They're going to say things about me. Some true, some not," she announced. "But what matters is what we do together. I don't run from mistakes. I learn. And I don't hide who I am. Not for anyone." The show of unity was powerful. Staff rallied behind Denise, sending her notes of support, standing together in group photos posted online with the hashtag #OrionProud. Investors, once nervous, saw the loyalty and redoubled their commitment. Yet, at home, Denise still felt the cost. She struggled with insomnia, waking at 2 a.m. to reread angry emails or review company expenses for the third time that night. Terrence, always watchful, made sure his mother ate, slept, and remembered why she'd fought for the job in the first place. "You're not alone, Mom," he'd remind her. "We're in this with you." Kayla, too, no matter how many interviews or meetings filled her days, checked in with Denise every night, sometimes just to send a meme or a silly photo of her cat. Anything to make her mother smile. The months passed. Fall bled into winter. The city outside Orion's windows braced against chill winds, but inside, something warmer flourished. The company's end-of-year review approached, and Denise called for something radical, a truth session, open to every employee, in person and via video link. No scripts, no managers screening questions, just voices. The first to speak was Malik, the janitorial trainee Yolanda had mentored. He spoke of the fear he'd felt on his first day, afraid he'd break something or say the wrong thing. He shared how, after Denise became CEO, he felt seen, how Yolanda had given him honest feedback, how Jason from the Diversity and Equity Group had helped him map out a path to better pay and more opportunity. "I never thought I'd be proud of my job," Malik said. "Now I am." Other stories followed. A single mother in HR who'd returned from maternity leave to a promotion instead of a demotion. A security guard who'd once dreaded calling out sick, now confident his job would wait for him. A trans woman from payroll, finally able to use her chosen name and pronouns at work, celebrated rather than sidelined. Not all stories were happy. A line worker in the warehouse spoke about a manager who still treated staff with disrespect. Denise listened, promised to address it, and did. The manager was demoted within a week, replaced by someone who understood the new Orion wasn't about fear, but about lifting people up. The town hall lasted 4 hours. By the end, staff lingered, reluctant to leave. They stood in clusters, sharing contact info, promising to keep talking. After everyone had left, Denise sat with Yolanda, Jason, Lauren, and Jamari in the empty atrium. The echoes of voices, fear, hope, laughter filled the space. Denise looked around, finally allowing herself a deep breath. "Did you ever think we'd see this?" Yolanda asked. Denise shook her head. "I hoped, but I never dared believe." Jason grinned. "Believe it. You changed everything." Jamari added, "People say you saved Orion, but really, you gave it back." Lauren nodded, emotion in her eyes. "I never thought I'd love coming to work. Now I do." Denise smiled, gratitude radiating from her. "I didn't do it alone." Beyond Orion, the world kept moving. News outlets wrote year-end retrospectives. The Janitor who became CEO, Orion's Revolution. Lessons for every industry. Why respect at work is good business. Denise's face appeared on magazine covers, usually against her wishes. She used her new influence to amplify the voices of others, nominating Yolanda for an industry award, recommending Jamari for a regional tech leadership council, inviting Malik to speak at a citywide youth employment summit. Orion began to serve as a model for other companies. Executives from far and wide visited, hoping to learn how to change their own corporate cultures. Denise met with them, candid but uncompromising. "Don't hire me to make you look good. Do the work. Listen to your people. If you're not ready to hear what hurts, you're not ready for change." Some listened, some didn't. But Denise refused to dilute the message. Meanwhile, Scott Bennett's lawsuit sputtered and died, his attempts at sabotage exposed and dismissed. Amanda Riley and Brett Morgan faded from the business press, remembered mostly as cautionary tales. But for Denise, victory was never just about the headlines. It was about the small daily wins. The janitor who won Employee of the Month, the new mother who brought her baby to the staff picnic, the immigrant line worker who became a department supervisor after years of invisibility. In private moments, Denise reflected on her journey. She visited her parents' graves on the anniversary of her hiring at Orion, leaving flowers and a note. "You taught me dignity. You taught me to stand tall. I hope I made you proud." She continued to walk the halls, listening more than talking. Her door was always open, not as a slogan, but as a living truth. Sometimes staff brought problems, sometimes ideas, sometimes just the need to be seen. Denise welcomed it all. At the following Workers' Council, Yolanda reported, "Staff satisfaction is up 40%, safety incidents are down, productivity's at a record high." Denise grinned. "That's not just numbers, that's lives changed." Terrence, reviewing the last of the legal files, closed his laptop and smiled at his mother. "They tried to write you out of the story. You became the story," Kayla added. "Let's make sure the story doesn't end with us. Let's teach others how to do the same." Winter gave way to spring. Orion blossomed. Employees walked a little taller, smiles coming easier, laughter returning to the lunchrooms and corridors. Denise watched it all with humility, never letting success turn to complacency. Her final memo of the quarter summed it up. "Change is never comfortable. It's never quick. But every day we get to choose fear or hope, silence or voice, division or community. I'm proud of what we've built. Let's keep going. Together." Spring came early that year, the city waking up to longer days, brighter skies, and a restless energy that seeped into every corner of Orion Industries. From her office window, Denise Harris watched sunlight play on the glass towers downtown and thought about time, not just the minutes and hours of the workday, but the years she'd spent fighting for a future she could only dream of. It was almost a year since the day Scott Bennett fired her in the lobby. Some mornings, that memory felt as sharp as the day it happened. Other times, it seemed like a nightmare from another lifetime. Denise rarely spoke about it in public anymore, but in quiet moments, at sunrise, walking the halls before anyone else arrived, she remembered the humiliation, the cold certainty in Scott's voice, and the knowledge that every eye in the room had been watching. Now, those same eyes met her differently. Staff stopped her in the hallway to say hello, to ask advice, to share good news about a child's graduation or a mother's recovery from illness. Employees who had once hidden their troubles from management now asked for help, confident it would come. Denise learned the names of new hires, sent handwritten cards for birthdays, and kept a notebook of favorite staff recipes, sharing them in the monthly newsletter. The company itself looked different. New murals brightened the lobby, painted by a group of staff artists who had volunteered their time. Plants filled the once sterile corners, tended by a rotating group of green thumbs from across the company. The old rigid security desk was replaced with a circular welcome kiosk. No more walls between staff and visitors, just an open space where anyone could ask for directions or a cup of coffee. But beneath the surface, bigger changes ran even deeper. The Workers' Council, once an experiment, was now the beating heart of Orion. Every department sent elected representatives and meetings overflowed with participation. Yolanda, now director of facilities, ran each session with a gentle but firm hand. "Let's get real," she'd say, banging her gavel on the battered oak table. "What's working, what's not, and what do we do about it?" This was where real decisions got made. It was in council meetings that staff voted to approve a living wage for all workers, to create a family leave policy that went far beyond federal minimums, and to set up a hardship fund for employees facing personal crises. Ideas that would have once died in committee were now piloted within weeks. If they worked, they stuck. If they didn't, they were improved. And Denise, true to her word, never overruled a council decision. She let people own their victories and their mistakes. On Fridays, Denise joined the maintenance crew for toolbox talks, informal huddles in the supply room where nothing was off limits. Darnell, now senior supervisor, led discussions on safety and workload, but the talk often drifted into family stories, jokes, and the little frustrations of daily life. Denise listened more than she spoke, always jotting notes in her battered old notebook. Elsewhere, the Diversity and Equity Task Force, led by Jason and joined by staff from every background, produced quarterly reports, holding every manager, including Denise, accountable to goals for hiring, promotion, and pay equity. No more hidden data, no more excuses. When goals weren't met, explanations were required and solutions, not apologies, were demanded. The ripple effect went far beyond Orion's walls. Suppliers, contractors, and partners saw the company's transformation and started asking their own hard questions. "What are your wages like?" a cleaning vendor asked Denise in one meeting. "How did you get buy-in from the top?" A delivery firm restructured their driver compensation plan after learning about Orion's living wage. A rival manufacturer called Yolanda for advice on how to handle staff grievances without retaliation. Denise became a sought-after speaker, not for her rhetoric, but for her honesty. She spoke at community colleges and union halls, at chambers of commerce and nonprofit fundraisers, always sharing the same message: listen to your people, trust them. If you want respect, you have to give it first. She never charged a fee, never sold her story to the highest bidder. When a business magazine offered her a cover shoot, she insisted on sharing the spotlight with Yolanda, Jamari, and Kayla. "No one does this alone," she told the interviewer. "If you see my face and not theirs, you've missed the point." But for all the headlines and applause, the work remained messy, imperfect, and hard. Old habits died slowly. Some managers, even after a year, still bristled at oversight. "I can't run my department if every decision has to go through a committee," Brian Walsh grumbled during one heated meeting. Denise let him speak, listened, then handed him the staff feedback forms showing widespread discontent. "You're not losing power," she said, voice calm but direct. "You're sharing it. If that's a problem, we'll help you find somewhere else to work." Most employees rose to the challenge. Some left unable or unwilling to adapt. Others, newly empowered, uncovered talents they never knew they had. Malik, the former janitorial trainee, completed his business management certificate with Orion's help and moved into facilities operations. Lauren, once anxious and apologetic, became head of HR, championing transparency and staff mental health. Denise delighted in these victories but never lost sight of the work ahead. Each week brought new problems, equipment failures, missed targets, the constant pressure of competition. But instead of panic or blame, Denise met every crisis with a simple question: who has the answer? Let's hear from them first. Outside of work, Denise became a pillar in her community. She volunteered at the local food pantry, helped organize reading drives at the elementary school, and mentored young adults from her old neighborhood. Some Saturdays, she'd invite a group of teenagers for a tour of Orion, walking them through the offices, the loading docks, and the break rooms, letting them see what was possible, and more importantly, introducing them to the people who made the place run. Denise never made these tours about herself. Instead, she'd introduce Yolanda as the brains behind the facilities team, Jamari as the tech wizard, Lauren as the go-to for how to build your career from the ground up. She'd point to the murals in the lobby, explaining how staff had painted them. "It's not about the job you start with," she'd tell the students. "It's about the work you do, the people you lift up, and the story you're willing to write for yourself." Her parents' house, the one she grew up in, not far from Orion's campus, became a sanctuary. On weekends, she'd host family dinners, inviting old friends, council members, and sometimes even former rivals who wanted to understand how she'd turned impossible into done. These dinners were lively, full of laughter, spirited debate, and the quiet pride of a community that had seen one of its own break through. But Denise also felt the weight of expectation. More than once, she found herself alone in her office late at night, the city lights flickering beyond the glass. Some nights, she replayed the moment Scott fired her, remembering not just the words, but the feeling of being alone, dismissed, and unwanted. Other nights, she read thank you notes from employees who'd gotten a second chance, or new staff whose lives had changed because someone finally listened. On the anniversary of her appointment, the Workers' Council surprised her with a celebration in the main atrium. The staff had gathered after hours, decorating the space with photos, quotes, and banners. Malik gave a speech, telling everyone how Denise's support had changed his life. Yolanda presented a scrapbook filled with stories from every department, a living testament to what they'd accomplished together. Denise was moved to tears. "I'm not usually lost for words," she admitted, wiping her eyes. "But tonight, I am. You remind me every day that the most important part of leadership isn't being in charge. It's making sure everyone has a seat at the table." That spring, Orion faced its first real test under Denise's leadership. An economic downturn threatened to shrink orders and force cutbacks. The Workers' Council gathered, bracing for the worst. In the past, layoffs would have come without warning, cutting the lowest paid and least senior first. Denise took a different approach. "We're all in this together," she told the council. "If sacrifices must be made, we share the burden." Ideas poured in: voluntary reduced hours for those who could afford it, or temporary wage freezes for management, with bonuses only if company goals were met, expanded job-sharing programs so no one would be left out of work. Denise opened the books for all to see, walking every department through the numbers, the risks, the possible outcomes. "I trust you to help find the best solution," she said, "not just for Orion, but for each other." The decisions were tough, but honest. A handful of temp contracts were not renewed, but no full-time staff lost their jobs. Managers volunteered for reduced pay, and even Denise took a pay cut. The Workers' Council established an emergency fund for anyone facing hardship. When business rebounded that summer, Orion threw a party, not to celebrate the end of hard times, but to honor the people who had stuck together and made it possible. The impact of Denise's leadership reached beyond business metrics. Community leaders invited her to join citywide advisory boards. Nonprofits sought her advice on everything from hiring practices to how to listen when people said, "This isn't working." Denise never pretended to have all the answers. She just shared what she'd learned. You don't need a title to change things. You need courage, honesty, and people who'll fight alongside you. Stories about Orion continued to circulate in the press, but the headlines changed. What began as the janitor who became CEO turned into a company that listens. National labor organizations asked Orion to consult on best practices. Local colleges featured Orion in their business ethics courses. Even competitors, once dismissive, quietly sent staff to observe the Workers' Council and the open-door meetings. Denise never claimed perfection. In every interview, she'd say, "We get things wrong, we make mistakes, but we learn, we fix, and we keep going." She kept her promise to never use her story for personal gain. Every speaking fee she accepted was donated to scholarships for working adults. One day, while visiting her parents' graves, Denise left a note beneath the headstone. "I kept my dignity, like you taught me. I tried to give it to others. Thank you for believing I could." The next chapter of Orion's journey wasn't written by Denise alone. As the years rolled on, the culture she'd shaped took on a life of its own. New hires arrived knowing they'd be expected to contribute, not just to their jobs, but to the company's evolution. Veterans like Yolanda and Jamari became living legends, mentoring the next generation, reminding everyone that change is a relay, not a solo sprint. The Workers' Council started hosting open forums for the community, inviting local high school students, small business owners, even city officials. These forums tackled tough subjects: racial equity, environmental sustainability, mental health at work. They weren't always comfortable, but they were always honest. More than once, hard truths were spoken, tears were shed, and genuine solutions emerged. At home, Denise finally allowed herself to enjoy the fruits of her labor. She took up gardening in her backyard, growing tomatoes and basil, sometimes inviting colleagues over for Sunday dinners. Kayla and Terrence visited often, their own lives thriving, both still involved in Orion, but now pursuing dreams beyond its walls. Kayla started a financial literacy program for single mothers. Terrence led a local campaign for criminal justice reform. On Orion's 10th anniversary under Denise's leadership, the staff threw the biggest celebration yet. A city park was rented out, food trucks circled the green, and bands played late into the evening. Stories were shared, funny, painful, triumphant. Employees who had started as temps stood proudly beside those who'd once been their supervisors. Denise watched from the center of it all, laughter and music swirling around her, grateful tears in her eyes. She gave a short speech at dusk, her words amplified not by a microphone, but by the attention and affection of hundreds who had come to celebrate what they'd built together. "When I was fired, I thought my story had ended. What I didn't know is that endings are just invitations to begin again. You taught me that. Every one of you. And now Orion is more than a company. It's proof that when we see each other, respect each other, and fight for each other, we can do anything." There was no script, no PR spin, just the truth. Afterward, Malik, now a facilities manager, approached her. "Ms. Harris, you're a legend here. What do we do next?" Denise smiled. "You lead. You listen. You make room for someone else's story." That night, as the party wound down and lanterns floated into the sky, Denise sat beneath a tree, surrounded by the people whose lives had intertwined with hers. She watched the stars flicker, breathed the warm air, and felt, maybe for the first time, the simple peace that comes from having done something lasting, something good. The legacy she left at Orion was never about one heroic act or even her tenure as CEO. It was about the thousands of small choices, every open door, every second chance, every honest conversation. Her lesson was simple. Real power is the power to make others powerful. And as Denise closed her eyes, listening to the laughter drifting through the night, she knew the company she once cleaned and later led would never again be the kind of place that forgot who made it great.